this commentary that Dana Bash did at CNN, which was like unhinged. And I'm trying to understand one, she's a political correspondent. Two, she's an anchor. When you listen to this commentary that she gives, how did this get past standards and practices at CNN? I'm gonna play some of this, so check this out.
Politics, I'm Dana Bash. We start with destruction, violence, and hate on college campuses across the country. This was the scene just a short while ago at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Police clashing with protesters. 12 people were arrested. Hours earlier, protests rocked the University of Arizona, where campus police used chemical irritant munitions to remove protesters. Around the same time at UCLA, pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian groups were attacking each other, hurling all kinds.
Let me stop right there. First of all, that's a lie. Pro-Israeli protesters attacked pro-Palestinian. The pro-Palestinian protesters were defending themselves. The video is undeniable. They were not attacking each other. The pro-Palestinian protesters were defending themselves after they were attacked by the pro-Israel demonstrators. That's called a fact, and it shouldn't be confused. Okay, go back to it.
Objects, a wood pallet, fireworks, parking cones, even a scooter. And before that, the NYPD was able to clear Columbia University after protesters barricaded themselves inside a campus building. 300 people were arrested at Columbia and City College of New York.
See right here. So let me show you what they just did there. You're discussing Columbia, saying protesters barricaded themselves. Now we know that it actually were outsiders who took over the building. 44 at Columbia. The rest were at City College. Here's the difference. Columbia is a private university. It's a closed campus. City is a public university. It's wide open. But when you put the two together, oh my God, 300 arrests. What sounds different? 300 at Columbia and City College, or 44 at Columbia and more than 250 at City College? But you show video of Columbia. Okay, go ahead.
But it is unclear how many were actually students. New York City Mayor Eric Adams warned this morning that professional outside agitators are getting involved.
Okay, let's stop right here. So here's a problem when you go on the air, when you say it's unclear how many were outside agitators. So why are you quoting a number? If anybody on my staff says, I think there were 30 people arrested, my first response is, what do you mean I think? What's the number? Well, I read this and it was 18, so where did 30 come from? Well, see what happens when you start asking questions? So when you go on the air and you throw something out there and you don't have the actual information, then I'm sorry, what are you saying? Because she was very clear when she said 300 protesters at Columbia, and then said they were students. Wasn't factual. Let's go.
There is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children, and I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York.
Okay, you mean such as when the NYPD said that there was the wife of a terrorist that was inside one of the buildings at Columbia, and then we later found out that wasn't factual? Gotcha. Okay.
Many of these protests started peacefully with legitimate questions about the war, but in many cases, they lost the plot. They're calling for a ceasefire. Well, there was a ceasefire on October 6th, the day before Hamas terrorists brutally murdered more than 1,000 people inside Israel and took hundreds more as hostages. This hour, I'll speak to an American-Israeli family whose son is still held captive by Hamas since that horrifying day that brought us to this moment. You don't hear the pro-Palestinian protesters talking about that. We will. Now, protesting the way the Israeli...
Okay, so Dana Bash said you don't hear the pro-Palestinian protesters talking about the hostages. Did y'all hear Dana Bash mention the 30,000 Palestinians killed? I didn't hear that. Okay.
She's a liar.
Government, the Israeli Prime Minister is prosecuting the retaliatory war against Hamas is one thing. Making Jewish students feel unsafe at their own schools is unacceptable, and it is happening way too much right now.
I'm a UCLA student. I deserve to go here. We pay tuition. This is our school, and they're not letting me walk in. My class is over there. I want to use that entrance. Well, I can't take it. Will you let me go in? This can be over in a second. Just let me and my friends go in.
Again.
Okay, all right. Here's the problem with that video. Did y'all see all of the students just walking around behind them?
He was just right there. Just go right the fuck over there.
Again, I want people who are watching, I need you to pay attention when people post stuff like this. There are people just walking behind them, and this dude is standing there. They won't let me go by. So you mean to tell me that on this massive campus, they have a line that stretches all the way over, they're not letting you walk by? And Dana, you actually use that video? Like, really? And you have the other students standing right there who are all quiet.
Right.
And if y'all see the frame, it's shot vertical, so you only see about 4 or 5 people. You don't even see how long. Y'all, come on now. Now listen to this.
You just saw is 2024 in Los Angeles, harkening back to the 1930s in Europe. And I do not say that lightly.
Okay, I'm sorry. She just said that what you saw in Los Angeles harkened back to the 1930s in Europe. Okay, let me go back. What happened in Los Angeles? She showed one dude who claims that he couldn't go to his class, but other students were milling all. And then, okay, as I said, the pro-Israeli protesters attacked the Palestinian protesters. So how are you hearkening back to the 1930s? And I don't say it lightly. Well, actually, you do say it lightly. And y'all, this is the problem you're seeing in mainstream media. You see the conflating of things. You see, and then it's like, oh, the pro-Palestinian students, they lost the plot. How? At Brown announced they are going to actually take a vote to divest. And they're not going to penalize the students.
Exactly.
You leave that out. That's literally a fact. But see, again, now, because see, y'all got to understand, if I come across somebody protesting, the first thing I'm going to say is, why y'all protesting? Mm-hmm. What are the reasons? But y'all notice, at no point, she mentioned, oh, the war and God. No. Their students first, at Columbia, they were protesting the opening of a center in Tel Aviv that Palestinian students could not attend. That's a fact. If you go, the original letter they submitted had the details in it. Oh, I'm sorry, details. That's called being a reporter. My bad. What was I thinking? Listen.
Fear among Jews in this country is palpable right now. Welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Dana Bash. We start.
So again, what we're seeing, Reese, we're seeing media folk create these narratives as opposed to, one, lean on folks who are on the ground. There was a sister at NBC who was on the ground saying, I was there. What y'all are saying happened. I didn't see. She's on the ground. You're sitting in a studio, Joe and Mika, in Florida, at your house in Florida. What the hell are you talking about? Well, I talked to friends. No, but you're not on the ground. And so what then happens is the media narrative becomes fact. Folk then run with it and say, well, CNN said, MSNBC said, as opposed to what actually happened. And this, to me, is a fundamental problem that we're seeing.
Well, I don't even think it becomes fact. It just further erodes people's trust in the mainstream media. This is why the trust in the media is in the pits, along with trust in Congress and a number of other institutions, because we see propaganda being pushed as though it is news. We see narratives being pushed that do not square with the facts, with what we can see with our own two eyes. And I mean, I don't know if people just have lost their damn minds or if they're just depraved individuals. I understand that there's a lot of fear around Trump being reelected, around this potentially hurting President Biden's electoral chances. And so, oh my God forbid anybody protest in favor of humanity, because that could hurt the Democrats. What about the people getting slaughtered? You know what could help the Democrats? Doing the right fucking thing. You know what could help the Democrats? Responding to these protests in a manner that honors the humanity of people and decency. You know what is escalating these protests, escalating the violence? Every single video that you showed, the common denominator was the police fucking with people. Yes. If you allow people to sleep in their tents, sit down, sing kumbaya shit, have a human chain, whatever, then they were going about their business. These people are not agitators for the most part. You're agitating them to die on the hill of slaughtering children, of rounding people up, dislocating people, forcing migration within a tiny strip of besieged territory that has been cut off of electricity, of food, of water, of resources, hospitals bombed, all kind of areas desecrated, churches, mosques, everything bombed, and you put them into a slither of land and you carpet bomb them, and then you starve them. This is what y'all are defending. There wasn't a ceasefire on October 6th. And I'm not defending in any way, shape, or form what happened on October 7th. I will not defend that. I'm not defending having hostages. But what's the proportionality here where Palestinian lives come into play? How many fucking children have to be slaughtered? We're already at least 14,000. That's not even counting the people that are currently starving to death. And so if you cannot see a reason why there's an outcry to stop that, why there's an outcry to stop billions of dollars going to aid in the slaughter of besieged, helpless people, you've lost the motherfucking plot, not these students. And they can put up whatever person they want. Oh, these bratty entitled children, these woo. We have too much emphasis on decorum in this country, too much emphasis on trying to win elections instead of pushing our politicians to do the right fucking thing. And we have more emphasis on that than we do on watching human carnage being broadcast in front of us over and over and over again. You've lost the fucking plot. If you put more emphasis on what bratty little children are doing, right, and how they doing it, than you do on the fact that the bombing and the slaughter and the starvation, the famine, and just the carnage needs to stop. Period.
Yep. All right, folks. So we'll see, because graduation is coming up, and so those will be interesting events ahead.
Wait. Can I say one more thing? Because President Biden said that the protests have led to the cancellation of the graduation. No, USC canceled the graduation because they did not want to give a valedictorian who was not who was Arab or Muslim the ability to give her speech. Yep, that is what canceled it, not agitators.
Yep.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Well, the axe is falling at Byron Allen's TheGrio. Several people have been laid off in their podcast and video teams, including their managing editor, Christy Oglesby. This is the statement the company released. Allen Media is making a strategic change to better position the company for growth that will result in expense and workforce reductions across all divisions. Now, Allen Media acquired TheGrio in 2016. Among those cuts, they've ended all their different shows except one involving Teray. So Mark Lamont Hill, who had a daily show airing around 6 p.m. On TheGrio. That show has been canceled. They hadn't even had the show. It hasn't aired for the last 3 weeks. Ebony Williams had a show that followed Mark. Her show has also been canceled as well. Now, remember, Byron Allen purchased the assets of Black News Channel for $11 million, buying up the distribution. He then used that to launch TheGrio TV. And so those shows are being canceled. And if you look at the Black-owned media landscape, other than what we do here at Roland Martin Unfiltered and the Black Star Network, that was the only daily shows on any Black-owned media outlet. And so if you look at right now, if you look at the linear cable networks, you look at TV One, you look at Revolt, you look at Afro Channel, you look at those are all Black-owned. Clio TV, TV One owns them as well. There are no daily news shows on those platforms. Even if you look at Revolt has a weekly show, you look at BET, they've got a monthly magazine show. That's all they have there, and so it's really just us. Ebony has nothing. Essence has nothing. Blavity has nothing. Black Enterprise has nothing, and you can look across the board. And the bottom line is this here, folks. Look, having a daily show absolutely matters that speaks to our issues. I had a weekly show at TV One. I can tell you it was very difficult having a weekly show and trying to cram in all the stuff that happened on a weekly basis into that one show. When we launched, we had the show for 4 years on TV One from 2009 to 2013, and then from 2013 to 2017, we launched News One Now, which was a daily show. And so these things absolutely matter. I reached out to Byron Allen, sent him a text yesterday, also Geraldine Moriba, who is one of the executives at TheGrio. Did not hear from either one of them. Wanted to get a statement from them with regards to these shows ending. But it is unfortunate that is the case. But I can tell you right now, we're continuing what we're doing right here. Faraji Muhammad, who he ended his daily show with us. He took a job as a producer for Tavis Smiley's show on his network. We ended D Barnes' show on the Black Star Network, but we continue with our other shows. They continue, and look, and we're going to stay focused. For everybody to understand, this show is profitable. This is what we know. What we do, we understand how to do this show. Our goal is to generate more advertising revenue from advertisers. We're trying to make that happen, but we plan on not going anywhere. Speaking to the issues that matter, and the thing that people have to understand, Robert, that look, there are all kinds of changes that are happening in the media landscape. But what cannot happen, and we have got to be absolutely focused to make sure that we have Black-owned media, not just when it comes to telling our story, but Black-owned media also creates opportunities for African Americans to be able to tell their story, for folks who to be panelists. I can't tell you how many people reach out to us, and we can't do all the stories that mainstream media would never give them the time of day. And so if we lose, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of entertainment shows and gossip shows and sports shows out there, but our audience deserve to have real news shows that we're not having to be caught up in a lot of the entertainment and sports drama.
You're absolutely correct, Roland. I'm going to challenge the viewers. I'm going to challenge the listeners. We have to start supporting Black-owned news and Black news media, because otherwise we only get propaganda. There are 1,050 trillion websites to talk about Blueface and Krishan and what they do on a daily basis. I know more about the relationship between Miss Netta and Charles than I have ever cared to know about. We need more than just gossip and internet stuff. We have to have real news in the Black community, because it's not as if these stories are not happening. And I think that it's telling that we've had so many Black media outlets not be able to financially sustain themselves. And that's partially because we, as a Black community, do not support Black news to the level that we need to be doing so. We see real major stories in Black news getting less views than a kid doing a makeup tutorial or opening presents. You realize that we are not taking these issues seriously. And this is why so often when it comes to political conversations, we get fed propaganda as opposed to policy. That when you have to talk to other communities, you have to come in talking about legislation, dollars, cents, how exactly this will impact your community. When they come to us, often they're talking about, entertainment and then doing the electric slide and all these other things, as opposed to policy, because they don't believe that we are real consumers of real news and real serious policy considerations. And if we start taking it seriously and putting real dollars behind it, if you build it, they will come. Roland, you've shown that.
But I think that, Rebecca, when we talk about how vital this is, and listen, I've lived it for a long time, and I can't explain to people enough. From a political standpoint, I'll give you a perfect example. In the last 2 months, there have been 4 Black-specific polls that were released. We've had those folks on this show. I think maybe one mainstream show did something on it, but they've been totally ignored. And so if you don't have an opportunity to be able to tell your story, it's like a tree falling in the forest. And we've got to understand that I've said for years, we will rue the day when we're having to beg mainstream white media, please, 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 baby, please, can you cover our stuff? That should never be the case. We've got to have Black-owned media that's speaking to our issues. And yeah, I don't give a damn about the Drake, Kendrick, J. Cole rap battle. I'm not talking about that. Other folks can, that's fine. But it's enough of that art out there. We got to have places where we talk about our stuff.
I mean, I do think there's policy implications in some of the entertaining news and gossip, but we still need a place where we can have serious news discussions, because even to talk about the role in the Drake and Kendrick beef and whether or not AI is going to play a part of it, to me, that is a real policy discussion that the Black community should be having, because it's also the future of our workforce as we see AI integrated into everyday life. But that said, I think it's really important to note, Roland, I think it was in March when you were spending a lot of time talking about the media upfronts and how important that they are, because it then allows media companies and Black-owned media companies to determine their budget for the following year or even the next following 2 years. So even listening to the sad story with what's happening over at TheGrio, I wonder if the lack of investment in Black-owned media companies during the media upfronts, if that also led to these layoffs. Like, we can't, as a Black community, we cannot afford to have less outlets because, like you said, there's only a handful of outlets that's delivering news by us, for us, about us. And that's very important as people are trying to navigate not just a political season, but just as people are trying to navigate, period, because you're not going to hear that from your local cookie cutter news.
And Suzette, the reality is this here. I mean, I have been for 3 years, 3.5 years, we've been dealing with these ad agencies being frozen out. We're finally, I think, making some headway. But there are still other ad agencies that are giving us the runaround. And what they do is they have you talk to their multicultural teams. But the real money is when you talk to the chief investment officer, the people who handle the budgets. And I'll tell you right now, for 3 years, Publicis, we dealt with that bullshit. They had us talking to folk that had no monetary authority whatsoever. It was a complete waste of our time. And it wasn't until one of my guys cussed them out. And then the chief investment person was like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on? We finally started getting real meetings with the chief investment officers of each one of the teams, which has led to real conversations, which we hope is going to actually lead to real money. But we were dealing with a bullshit group of people who were just giving us the runaround, and then we find out that in the 3 years we were dealing with them, they were never presenting our stuff to the other teams. These teams had no idea that we existed, the Black Star Network, that Urban Edge Network, which is our advertising partner, existed. And so this is the kind of stuff that we've been dealing with. And so, again, losing shows is not a good thing. The thing for us is, and I just keep telling folk, we can't act like this is not a big deal. I've lived and breathed media since I was 14, and I'm gonna tell you right now, there are stories that we do every single day. They are not going to get any attention at ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. Black people watch MSNBC more than any other cable network. And I can tell you right now, 98% of the stuff that we do will never see the light of day at MSNBC.
Absolutely. When we look at this decision, I mean, you pointed out that news is a business. At the end of the day, in order to keep employees, in order to keep an operation running, I mean, Byron Allen is a businessman and he's going to look at what he has to do. But as you stated, that the money is really the issue. Where advertisers are choosing to spend or not spend their dollars is really the issue. When we look at, as you've stated, I'm sure there are many other Black-owned publications that could attest to what you just stated, which is that the advertisers are happy to take our money, but do not want to spend money to get us and to acquire us within their spending audience, their target audience. So we have to do double the work to convince them that this is the market share that we have, and that, this conditioning that they're okay with, which is the entertainment and that fluffy, nonsensical, oftentimes, entertainment media. We have to also just, as consumers, as Robert pointed out, be very aware of what's happening to us intellectually and where we're being pushed in terms of, how we're spending our time, what we're thinking about, and what, that creates as far as what we think our agenda is. We need spaces that are elevated. We need spaces that are Black owned, that can, like you said, target these stories that will never see the light of day in mainstream media. It's great that you have been able to, have the blueprint and show that this is something that is plausible. But it is something that, again, some might argue by design, is to keep us in a mindset that is, full of, entertainment, sports, and that's it. But we need to have these serious discussions, because just like, we are seeing Black communities that are just so passionate about what's happening in Palestine, they have to also be engaged in understanding what is happening with us right here.
Yep. All right. We appreciate it. So we'll wait to hear back. Byron hits me back, I'll let y'all know what he says. All right.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
It's got a little testy today in New York City where Donald Trump was on trial. The judge of the case really went after Donald Trump's lawyers by saying, you really want to play with me when it comes to this gag order and his constant outbursts on social media. That took place earlier today. Of course, when testimony began, David Pecker, former leader of the National Enquirer, took the stand and admitted that they struck a deal in 2015 to help the Trump campaign by locking up or locking down stories of people were alleging affairs with Donald Trump. They call these highly, highly confidential situations. Go to my iPad. This is from the Yahoo story here. It says that Trump's then lawyer Michael Cohen fed the tabloid negative stories about rivals like Senator Ted Cruz when they sensed him gaining momentum on Trump in the GOP primary, Pecker testified. Steve Bannon also pitched negative stories about Hillary Clinton to Pecker that the Enquirer published. But they had a deal called Catch and Kill, where the National Enquirer paid $30,000 to Trump Tower doorman so he could not discuss a story of Trump fathering a child out of wedlock. The short story was not true, but Pecker said, quote, I made the decision to buy the story because of the potential embarrassment it would have to the campaign of Mr. Trump. They also had a catch and kill example involving former Playboy model Karen McDougal, who was shopping a story about her having a sexual relationship with Trump. Quote, "I think you should buy it," Pecker said he told Trump, who was mayor at the time during the 2016 campaign. The thing that's really interesting here is when you look at all these crazy Trump folk who act as if this is no big deal, Mustafa, is that it shows you how they don't care, And one of the things, though, that folks have been talking about is, the impact on potential independent voters. Here's a perfect example. Now, Fox News loves doing these, what I call dumb folks in diners stories. So what they do is they send out Lawrence B. Jones, who, you need a haircut. Send him out to interview these folks in these diners. They sound like idiots. If you want to see a true MAGA idiot, watch this woman who's wrapped in a Trump flag like she's in need of a blanket, just move to tears about how much we really need this thug back in the Oval Office. Listen.
I was talking to this young lady right here. Hey, how you doing? Good morning. We were talking about the former president being under prosecution right now. What do you make of it? Do you think that is fair?
No, I don't think it's fair. It's ridiculous. They're just trying to keep him busy so he can't run.
You were telling me yesterday that as you thought about the case and you were watching about what was going on in New York, that it brought you to tears. Why is that?
Tears, because we need Trump back or else we're going to lose our country. We're going to lose our country. And what's happening with these protesters is heartbreaking. It's history happening all over again, and they don't understand how bad it could get or will get if we don't get Trump back in.
Thank you so much. Let's talk with some more folks here. Sir, how you doing?
Good.
I see you got your MAGA shirt on.
I do.
The president is...
You know what? Let's go back and listen to another idiot. I just got to listen to another idiot.
How do you feel about it? Do you think that is fair?
Not at all. They're going after him just to keep him off the trail. And if it was anybody else, it wouldn't even be a case. But just because he's the president, they're going after him. It's the only way they can win.
So the question is, guys, can Donald Trump get a fair process in New York City? Sir, what do you think about that? You got Donald Trump, he's in Manhattan, you got a DA that made a campaign promise to go after him. The area that is seating the jury, only 80% of them are Democrats and only 20% of them voted for Donald Trump. Do you feel like they can be fair?
Absolutely not. I think that the media as a whole has made it their mission to try and come together against Donald Trump, and that's all they're concerned about is beating him.
I was talking to this young lady.
Here,
hey,
let's see here, Mustafa. You notice Lawrence never asked the question, hey, do you think Donald Trump should have paid off a porn star who he cheated on his wife with? You notice that actually wasn't asked. So we'll talk about a fair trial. He's also, Mustafa, on trial for the exact same thing that Michael Cohen pled guilty to under the Trump Department of Justice.
Well, the Republicans used to label themselves as the party of family values. And when you have both reporters who won't ask the poignant questions, really they're just basic, straightforward questions, then that sort of shares the framing that they're approaching this from. The other part of it is you see individuals who wrap themselves in privilege. And privilege means that you don't have to actually deal with the facts, because the facts, the law, whatever the situation might be, no longer really apply to you, because they definitely got it wrong, because if it had been anybody else, they would be in jail. Some would say under the jail for the things that, Trump has done over the years. So to ask the basic question, is it all right for you to pay off a porn star as your wife has just had a baby? When you don't ask the basics, then that pretty much tells us exactly where you're coming from. But the deeper part is about the values of the Republican Party, or the lack thereof, when you are willing to, in many instances, call yourself people of faith, but yet the individual whom you're willing to give your vote to has no reflection of any of the major religions. Maybe if you're doing something with some Trump occultism or something like that. But, it's just a shame to see the erosion of basic values that have happened for at least a percentage of our country.
The thing that just really cracks me up, Joy, is that He's admitted, yeah, we paid her off because we didn't want the public to know, so it's going to hurt my campaign. They never bring that stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we wonder why is Trump doing all these antics, why is he threatening jury pools, why is he challenging the judge, why is he threatening a judge's daughter, why is he behaving so outrageously? When we ask why, it's because he's feeding red meat to his followers, people who would believe him. And he's trying to create a narrative that it doesn't matter what happens. It's a fait accompli. We are out to get him. That is, and that it won't matter. He's going for voter nullification, not just jury nullification.
Right.
Because the facts, he's lost on the facts, on the merits. So he has to be on everything but the merits. That's why he keeps up these antics. And you are right. He's doing it for his cult.
I just think it's hilarious, John Quell, how he and his attorneys go, this is no big deal. I mean, this is really no big deal. Actually, it's against the law. And again, his own attorney has already gone to jail. His own attorney got charged by his Department of Justice. So if the case against you is bogus, well, wasn't the case that your Attorney General, Bill Barr, prosecuted him on, wasn't that bogus too?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, I've noticed that a lot of the Trump supporters make it a partisan issue, right? Because he's the president, however, the former president. However, just because of whatever position that you have in society, that does not make you above the law. And if you committed crimes, you should be prosecuted for those crimes. You should not be treated differently because of whatever position that you have in society. And frankly, not just that lawyer, tons of Trump's lawyers, right? If we even talk about the Georgia indictment, it's tons of his lawyers have been charged with felonies and tons of them have pled already. And so it's insane to me that a criminal trial is about what party you are associated with, when it has nothing to do with that. This is the criminal justice system. This has to do with pursuing justice. And you cannot commit crimes, and just because of whatever position you hold, that you're not held accountable to those crimes, including the violation of that gag order that was instrumented through the court.
Yep. And how about this here? If you don't want to be prosecuted, don't break the law. I know that sounds like a novel concept, but it's kind of basic. It's kind of basic.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
2024, guess what? In Louisiana, the state Supreme Court there is allowing a largely white community to break apart and separate the city of Baton Rouge to create their own city. This has been a 6-year effort by folks there. On Friday, the Supreme Court granted the formation of the predominantly white city of St. George, which will be separate from Baton Rouge. The ruling is sparking concerns about segregation. Activist Gary Chambers posted a video talking about this here. He joins us now from Baton Rouge. Gary, glad to have you here. You made clear, Gary, that this was a very organized effort by a handful of people with a lot of money to achieve the creation of their own city. Walk folks through how this happened.
So, Roland, we have a man named Norman Browning who organizes a group of about 10 people that decide they want a new school district because they don't want their kids to go to the schools of Baton Rouge. Keep in mind, Baton Rouge is the city that had the longest desegregation lawsuit in America. We didn't finish that lawsuit until the 90s.
And so when you look at the conversation around people wanting a new school district, these are people who ultimately don't want their kids to go to school with black kids. Currently, the school district in Baton Rouge is 80% black, even though the city is 56% black. So white parents in Baton Rouge right now, for the most part, do not send their kids to public schools in Baton Rouge. As a result of not getting that school district, these folks then decided to try to start a city. They failed the first time because the city was, I think at that time, going to be 60% white. They went back, cut out black neighborhoods, cut out black apartment complexes, made the municipality smaller, put it back on the ballot, and got it passed by a vote of 17,000 people. The vote of 17,000 now impacts 400,000 people who live in East Baton Rouge Parish because of the general fund that's $1 billion of city parish money. 300 million of that is not dedicated. And they're going to take away $48 million of resources from the general fund in order to create this new municipality. So I don't really care if they go off and segregate themselves, but I do care that we've paid into the fortunes of that portion of town for the last 50 years. And to say that you're going to start a new community and then we owe you money for that community, well, we've been paying a whole lot for a long time, and we want our portion to be paid for if you're going to get it.
So what's interesting here, you also mentioned that you have a black mayor in Baton Rouge, and it's not like, Baton Rouge ain't Atlanta. It's not like there have been black mayors for the last 30 plus years.
No, she is the second black mayor of Baton Rouge. Kip Holden was the first black mayor of Baton Rouge. He was elected in 2004, took office in 2005. So when you put that into perspective, black folks have only been in leadership in this city for under 20 years, okay? So to tell us that the woes or the condition of this city are all the fault of the black leadership, and let's be clear, Roland, the council is majority white, majority conservative in Baton Rouge. It's a 12-member council, 7 white conservatives serve on the Metro Council here in Baton Rouge, and they approve or disapprove of all of the plans of the mayor. And so when we talk about the progress of a community, we have to talk about the inequities and the tale of two cities that have existed for long before Sharon Weston Broome was the mayor of Baton Rouge. We have to talk about how we've invested in South Baton Rouge, the portion of town that is segregating themselves away, and to the demise of North Baton Rouge, actually. And so if we don't have honest conversations about how we got here, then we can't have an honest conversation about how we move forward. And the truth is, when people talk about this unity and why do we talk about race, this is why we talk about race, because people are literally segregating their children, segregating the city, and then taking away resources from our community. And to be clear, 50 years ago, when black people were becoming the majority or growing in population in Baton Rouge, they changed us to a consolidated form of government, which was we won't just have a city, we'll have a city and a county. So Mayor Broome is the mayor of the city of Baton Rouge and the parish president of the parish of East Baton Rouge. And so we have a council that is convened that represents the entirety of the parish, but white communities continue to segregate themselves off when they realize that black leadership is going to be in charge for the future of this community.
I saw there was a state representative who's looking to have this Supreme Court decision reheard or try to have them do it again?
President of the City Council, Lamont Cole, Mayor Pro Tem Lamont Cole, is challenging to have them rehear it. There are certain aspects that the justices did not consider. One of the things the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who is a conservative, wrote a dissenting opinion and said that this was a decision masquerading as a ruse of a decision, and said that that was a deficient argument put forth because they couldn't even prove that they were going to pay for the services of the city. They have proposed that it's going to cost them $47 million to run a city of 80,000 people, and they're going to privatize every aspect of the services of the city. They don't even have a plan for policing, Roland. They plan to just take the sheriff's department and just give them $4 million and hope that that covers the bill.
Wow. Questions from our panel. Greg Carr.
Thank you, Roland. It's always good to see you, Brother Chambers. The way I understand it, and I know you know this history better than all of us, these white boys have done this earlier, I guess, with Central, is it, outside of Baton Rouge? And I'm from Nashville, so I remember how they went municipal. Nashville, Davidson County, Atlanta, Fulton County, Jefferson County, Birmingham. My question is about how what's the impact of us not getting involved in the political process? I know you've been doing that. You know, we all came to know you probably outside of Louisiana when you jumped on Connie there at the school board meeting. But, you know, what is it going to take for our people to understand? I remember the comedian Paul Mooney once said, you know, they want to move away from us now, but during slavery and Jim Crow, they wanted us all up under them in their beds, in their bedrooms, and the kitchens. But now that that's over, they want to get away. What is it going to take to trigger some kind of resurgence in our consciousness to get involved in what has been a long-term strategy for these kind of racists, which is to get away from us as far as possible?
You know, I think that some of us had hoped that some people were better than they were, and the realities of today are making people have a wake-up call. I hope, that is my hope, that being able to see things that you and I and Roland and others have been talking about for years play out in real time, I think is a clarion call that many people are going to say, I didn't think they would go this far. They will go this far and further. They want to take as many rights from you as possible. Just today, there was a conversation about a bill in the state legislature in Louisiana that will make it a crime to have an abortion pill. That if you have an abortion pill, they're going to make it a controlled substance in the state of Louisiana. That if you have a person is found with pills that induce an abortion, that you would be considered to have a controlled substance in the state of Louisiana. These people will go to the pits of hell to strip your rights away from you in every aspect, whether you are a man, if you're a black man, black woman, or if you're a woman in general, they will go to the pits of hell to strip your rights away from you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Reese.
Mr. Chambers, it's always good to see you out here on the front lines. My question, to your point about the composition of the leadership in Baton Rouge, can you explain how this new segregated city, does this just siphon off resources from a black city while still keeping white overseers in place in Baton Rouge, or will this actually empower more black residents to take back more power in the city and possibly change the composition of the way the leadership is structured right now?
So because we have a consolidated form of government and a gerrymandered map, we currently don't have the potential for black leadership to be able to run the entirety of the community. The gerrymandered map is the problem right now. There's conversations to challenge that even in the courts to make sure that the city council gets a fair map in Louisiana, because every map that's been drawn in the state has been ruled unconstitutional, in my opinion. If you rule the congressional maps and the legislative maps to be unconstitutional, then you got to know that the city council maps in the blackest cities are unconstitutional as well. And so when you look at that, that's the challenge for us, that we have built these communities for the last 50 years with the tax dollars of black folks that in the northern portion of the parish, seeing divestment in our communities. And now these people want to take their toys and go home. There's a new exit off the interstate that Mayor Sharon Weston Broome approved for the people that live in this portion of town. But you say that she hadn't done anything for your side of town. Folks in North Baton Rouge would challenge and say that we want more done in North Baton Rouge. And so we have seen the rise of that side of town by the expenses of all of us. And so what we are saying now is you can't then get resources from us and bleed us dry and then go and prosper with all that we built. And so we've got to have a position of protecting what is for the citizens of Baton Rouge. If they want to start their own city, start it from scratch. Y'all so damn bad.
Well,
I know that's right.
So look, the shenanigans continue. Monday, Baton Rouge Mayor Sharon Weston will be joining us on the show. Gary, keep up the battle, keep fighting, and we'll keep elevating it and keeping an eye on it, because I keep telling folk, if you don't have black-owned media, it's a lot of stuff that will get done, and nobody will ever know about it until it's too late.
Thank you so much, Roland. We really appreciate you.
All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
You know, I saw this article over the weekend that I thought was kind of interesting. What tripped me out in looking at the article, it talked about taxes. It talked about President Joe Biden's plan. He wants to tax folks, families that make $400,000 or higher. And I thought it was interesting. And there was a brother who was quoted in the article who said, you know, this is not fair. I don't feel like, you know, I'm rich because with 400,000, and as a result, you know, I'm going to pull the story up. He goes, you know, I'm going to vote for Trump. And the headline was, I don't think of myself as rich, the Americans crossing Biden's $400,000 tax line. So I thought it was just interesting seeing that. And the reason it's a trip is because, one, a lot of people literally have no clue about taxes in this country. They have no clue about how this actually came about. And I want to go to Julian first because I posted this. I'm going to show the article in a second. And I posted this, Julian, because the first thing I said was, okay, I wonder if this brother went to college, and I wonder if he got any Pell Grants. Where does the money come from? Then I said, well, to this, I wonder if the brother realizes that, you know, does he think about when he's driving on roads? How's that paid for? Does he think about when he's in Tampa and they have disaster relief, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, where that money comes from? It always trips me out, these folks who complain about taxes, but never think about the stuff that taxes pay for. And then, well, how dare you do it? And don't even realize that Biden's plan, it's not increasing your taxes, Julian, on the 400,000. It's increasing your taxes on what you make above the 400,000.
Don't understand the tax system at all, Roland, as you know. They also don't understand, as an example, this brother's fussing about 400,000. If you pay into the Social Security system, you're capped out at about 160,000. So all these people who make more than 160,000 are not paying into the Social Security system, which is why we have so many inequities there. As you mentioned, roads, bridges, regulation. We've had several challenges with airplanes, you know, parts falling out the sky and carrying on. The Federal Aviation Administration is a regulatory agency that basically is financed by our tax dollars. We're about to go into a season of extreme heat. OSHA, Office of Safety and Health Administration, is the one that passes regulations about brakes and things like that. And quite frankly, your friend, Mr. D. Satan down there in Florida, they just passed a law that prohibited localities from regulating brakes. Who works outside in the winter, in the summer rather? Brown folks, black folks, you know, people who are agricultural. They get heat stroke. OSHA needs to step in there. So there's so many things that our taxes pay for. Our schools, of course, local taxes pay for, but also Title I schools, which are schools that serve people below a certain income level, neighborhoods before a certain income level, Title I, get federal grants because the taxes, local taxes, don't pay enough for them. So everybody fusses about taxes, and you know, sometimes a good reason. But the fact is, we have to look at what the taxes are for, how the taxes enhance our lives, right, and what we're getting. And I'll tell you, I had an argument with some conservative on the radio recently, and the woman was talking about eliminating taxes. And I said, "How old's your mama?" And she said, "Why?" I said, "I just want to know. I'm curious." She said she was 78. I said, "Does she get Social Security?" She said, "I said, taxes pay for that. Even if it's not the Social Security taxes, they don't fully cover it. The Social Security Administration is also, because all these people talk about they don't like taxes, need to look at their lives and look at their pocketbooks and figure out what they're getting for those taxes."
You know, what I thought was interesting, Derek, when I saw this piece here, and go to my iPad, Anthony. This is the piece itself. It's in the Wall Street Journal. I don't think of myself as rich. The Americans crossing Biden's $400,000 tax line. And, you know, this guy, Aaron Littles of Tampa, says he feels unfairly targeted by the $400,000 cutoff. Okay. Now, and so there was a quote in here. Let me find it. And I sort of laughed when I saw his quote because he was highly offended by this. And hold on, wait till I find it. He goes, "I've hit the American dream, and now I'm going to have to pay more taxes. That doesn't feel great to me. It's demotivating." Derek, here's what's crazy. You know, when you hear that, it's strange to me. It's strange to me when I hear that. And part of the reason, Derek, why I was looking up. Part of the reason why I was looking up. I was looking at where I grew up because Saturday I stood in my new backyard, and I saw this. And so I thought about where I grew up with my parents, neither one who went to college. Parents who never made more than $50,000 a year. And I thought about where I am now. I thought about moving into a new home, still owning my home in Texas where my parents live and my nephew lives there, and the life that I have. And the last thing I'm about to do, Derek, is say some bullshit like, oh my God, raising taxes is demotivating. No, it's not. But I have to understand that, you know what? The road that I drove on, the cops that patrol the area, the lights, the sewer system, the highway, all those things are paid via tax dollars. Now, I totally understand folks saying, I want to keep as much money as I can make. And so as a business owner, I understand that. But when my accountant tells me, hey, Roland, when you buy these things, you can write all of that money off. Well, that means I'm going to go buy some other stuff for the studio to make us better, to lower my tax threshold. But the fact of the matter is, when I write that check, I also understand how I want it to be used, how I don't want it to be wasted. But this notion of, oh, sure, let's demand this and this and this from government, but I don't want to pay for it. I want somebody else to pay for it. Where in the hell do you think it comes from?
You know, Roland, when you think about this discussion or this debate between socialism and capitalism, folks who have been received a lot of those tax dollars by way of incentives and grants, they don't talk about that. PPP, where do they think that money came from, Roland? Right? These grants, Pell Grants, as you've already outlined, mentioned about the infrastructure. And so when you think about where our tax dollars pay for the hospitals, the schools, the infrastructure, the fire department, all these things is sourced by our tax. I want to highlight, Roland, is this. When you think about the Industrial Revolution that took place in the United States, the Rockefellers, Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan, all of them, how do you think they started their company? The government incentivized them to lay that rail. Where do you think Boeing get their dollars from to build airplanes? Government. So these tax dollars are being used to help individuals basically push their business forward, right? Steve Jobs, you know, he got a lot of money from government to help build out Apple, and so on and so forth. So I just find it very interesting when we have this conversation around socialism and capitalism. Those who like Elon Musk don't tell the truth that they got $600 million to help him become the multi-billionaire that he is.
On Congo, I find this to be interesting. Some fool named Sean Ryan on our YouTube chat goes, "Where has socialism ever worked?" Anthony, go to my iPad. Sean Ryan is typing on a thing called the internet that was actually created by the United States government. Government researchers created the internet. You see right here, this article was published in Scientific American's former blog network, and it says right here, okay, right here, that the Pentagon, ARPANET, was the internet's immediate predecessor. And it talks about when the internet was founded, when it was privatized. We can go on and on and on. The bottom line is, it was government researchers that put us in the position right now. Folk don't seem to pay any attention to that. The point I'm making is, if we're going to sit here and, I mean, we can debate and we want to argue. Like I had a guy on Twitter, he goes, well, I just think the $400,000 is, this, I found this to be hilarious. He goes, the $400,000 is just arbitrary. I said, okay. And he was talking about how what his family makes, and if my wife is this, and I'm this here, and I'm listening to him talk, and I went, I wonder if he even understands what the median average income is in the United States. And he was just, and again, he was just sitting here talking and talking, and I was like, okay. And he was complaining about this arbitrary 400,000 mark. And I had to remind him of this here, is that, y'all, this right here is from the U.S. Justice Department. This says the following, this is called Census Bureau Median Family Income by Family Size. The following table provides median family income data reproduced in a format designed for ease of use in bankruptcy forms. You'll see right here, okay, starting with Alabama, it shows one earner all the way to family size. You'll see here that the high, so Hawaii, let's say four people. Hawaii is at 125,000. Connecticut is at 137,000. Let me go see if anybody's higher than Connecticut. Maryland's 138,000. Okay, New Jersey is 140,000. New York is 117,000. So New Jersey is the highest with 4 kids. The median family income in New Jersey is 140,000 on the Congo. This fool, this dude is complaining. And y'all, here's the numbers. Right here, 4 people. Y'all, it's right here. It's justice.gov. The data is right there. 85,000, 108, 89. Let me see what the lowest is. So New Jersey's is 140,000. So the marker is 85.
Massachusetts is 148.
Okay, Massachusetts is 148. So they're the highest. Okay, so right here, Alabama's 85,687. Let me see if anybody, right here. Mississippi is 74,888. New Mexico is 70,316. Let me see if anybody lower than New Mexico. No. So Massachusetts, New Mexico is $70,316. Massachusetts is $148,713. That's median family income. I'm like, bruh, you complaining that 400,000 on the Congo is arbitrary when you're making 2.5 times more than what the median family income Massachusetts make? This is why I try to tell some people, listen to what your dumb ass is saying. I cannot sit here as somebody making that salary. Well, this is just a damn shame. That's why I went back and looked at the house I grew up in to remind my ass where I came from.
You are absolutely right. Dr. King, when he talked about socialism versus capitalism, he says in America, we have socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. This idea the poor got to pull them bootstraps out. But when you're talking about rich, when we talked about, Tesla and other groups, they get that government assistance and that help. When we talk about these stadiums, these big stadiums that these owners of these teams never pay for, taxpayers' dollars, they build these things. At every single juncture, we talk about what taxes are doing for our economy. And I like when I see, these guys called the patriotic millionaires, like some of America's richest individuals who constantly say, tax us, tax us, tax us. We want to pay our fair share. Because on the flip side of this also, Roland, is we got to look at the stock market and what is happening with all of these people making all of this money under Biden's economy. And the stock market is raving in ways that it hasn't been as well. So it's like they're trying to get it on both ends. And so if we are not, mindful of this, we're going to have people like that. The guy in that article, Littles, or whatever his name is, they're going to become the new face of the people who are suffering under Biden's tax policies, when every economic indicator for the most part has been up under Biden compared to Trump. And if you're not going to look at what you have been able to get in this country, what you have been able to build in this country, and want to have no type of instance or instincts of wanting to give back, then it's definitely shame on you. But this is what our government, our so-called leaders are doing. What did Trump say in 2016 when Hillary Clinton called him out? He said, not paying this amount of taxes, it makes me smart. Being able to get away and game the system. And so we see every single day they want to continue to game the system. And the fact that a brother would say that and say that I'm going for Trump, when he's going to do everything else to go against you as a black person, but you might get that tax cut, that's really all you're in it for. That's really, it's disgraceful. It's really disgraceful.
And so Mark Cuban was tweeting about this, and Mark Cuban actually posted this. This is when the direct deposit that Mark Cuban made to the government. He posted this. KPMG, his accountants, said that Mark Cuban, his taxes for this year, $275,900,000. And Mark Cuban said, I'm proud of what I've been able to do, how much I've been able to make, and I happily will make that direct deposit because I understand that these things cost. Just something people, real quick, 30 seconds. I got to go to the next guest. Go.
It's a false dichotomy to talk about socialism versus capitalism. What we're talking about is a compassionate capitalism, that's a whole other story. What we're really talking about is a capitalism that is fair.
Right.
That's what we're talking about. But no one is advocating Soviet-style socialism. So it's a false dichotomy, but it allows crazy people to sort of say, oh, gee, we're veering towards socialism. No, what we want is a compassionate capitalism where everybody pays their fair share. And we have compassion for people at the bottom.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Folks, protests led by pro-Palestinian college students continue to break out at colleges and universities across the nation. UCLA canceled classes today after overnight demonstrations turned violent when pro-Israeli students also attacked pro-Palestinian students. In New York, protesters broke into Columbia University's Hamilton Hall and barricaded themselves. NYPD then stormed the campus, arrested 119 people, and due to the unrest on the campus, students took their final exams remotely. The pro-Palestinian protests are demanding that their schools divest funds from Israeli military operations. Jewish students called the protest anti-Semitic and said they fear for their safety. Rula Jabril is an award-winning journalist, visiting professor, joins us from New York. Glad to have you here. First and foremost, I talked about this the other night, and I've been watching all of this coverage, and I've been watching the framing of this, and we're at a point now where people are literally saying that if you are protesting against Israel, you're anti-Semitic. If you're protesting for your school to divest, you're anti-Semitic. A person could actually be against war and not be anti-Semitic. What do you make on how that is the framing where everything, any criticism of Israel and its actions in its battle against Hamas can be deemed anti-Semitic?
Roland, thank you for having me on this very troubling day for America's democracy. Let's start by saying that the attempt to criminalize anti-war protesters, who, by the way, many of whom are Jewish. The leading organization behind these protests, it's called Jewish Voices for Peace. You have Jewish professors, Jewish scholars, Jewish academics who are backing this. I myself interviewed Jason Stanley, who is Jewish himself, who teaches at Yale. And he himself agrees with you and me, who we need to not conflate anti-Israel government criticism of Israeli government actions and criminality with anti-Semitism. These are two separate things. But there's a clear attempt by many in Congress, many sadly in the media, to conflate anti-war activism with anti-Semitism. This is so dangerous because it plays into the hand of real anti-Semites. The people who marched on Charlottesville said, Jews will not replace us, blood and soil. Those people are anti-Semitic. The people who are marching saying, divest from the war, don't arm Israel, stop the war in Gaza, stop slaughtering civilians, children and women, and stop mass starvation, those people are activists who want the war to stop. They're not against Jewish people, actually many of whom are Jewish. They're against the war, but also they're against their own government bankrolling that atrocity in Gaza.
When I saw the action last night, and I look at the coverage and the number, reporters who said they had never seen that type of aggressive stance taken by law enforcement. We saw what Texas thuggish Governor Greg Abbott did when he ignored the Austin Police Department, instead calling in Texas state troopers to deal with unrest there. I saw there was a video. We saw what happened to Professor at Vanderbilt. It was another video I saw of a professor who was literally being punched and beaten by police and security, and he suffered broken ribs. And doctors said he's lucky to be alive. And if you see the video, he actually didn't provoke a cop or hit anybody. And so when you see law enforcement, they basically have the permission of political leaders to beat folks as they see fit.
Yes, and I heard Prime Minister Netanyahu, who 2 days ago, this is the guy that actually normalized fascists around the world, from Viktor Orban to Donald Trump to many others, is saying that these students are basically reminiscent from the 30s, the Nazis. He's calling them Nazis. Israeli and American politicians are calling them terrorists. We have our colleagues calling these peaceful protesters who are 20 years old, who are our kids' age, are entitled to protest a war and their government complicity with the war. They're calling them pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, pro-terrorist. They're calling them terrorists. I am terrified because I know where this is going to lead. Somebody will get killed. Somebody will be hurt. And they'll have the whole country on fire. I mean, we already see a looming threat of a second Trump, election. And then the Democratic Party that's supposed to defend democracy, free speech, and free assembly is the one consistently enabling not only the police, unleashing police violence, enabling Netanyahu and his government, who, by the way, simultaneously, you have two ministers, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, who are calling to annihilate, to destroy completely Gaza, and then they're calling to shoot Palestinian civilians because prisons are overwhelmed with numbers. They arrested 9,000 Palestinians, on some of them without any charge, by the way. 3,000 that are sitting there on what they call administrative detention. And he said, well, we're overwhelmed. The police system, the prison system is overwhelmed. Maybe we should kill some of them. He called the IDF, the military, and demanded, said, why are you arresting too many people? You should kill some of them. There's so many. So you have a really fascist regime in the occupied territories, not only in Gaza, also in the West Bank, against Palestinians. And then you're seeing here our democratic governors, president, and law enforcement criminalizing and inciting against these young students simply because they are questioning policies that we know will not guarantee the security of either the United States or Israelis. Dismantling.
Go ahead.
Please.
Go ahead.
And by doing so, we need to understand this urgently. Either we divest immediately from imperialism, ethno-nationalism, and militarism, or we get fascism here in America. You can't have it both ways. You cannot have a democracy while enabling illegality with a military occupation and basically colonial state and colonial state, and think this will not come back to haunt you. What's happening in Gaza will not stay in Gaza. The streets of America are on fire for a reason, because people feel betrayed by this administration that failed them on the one thing they voted this administration for, to defend America's democracy here at home and overseas.
I saw this tweet here by Ari Fleischer, former White House press secretary. Go to my iPad, Henry. He says the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville was reprehensible, but it ended in 2 days. What's happening now on college campuses is worse. It's been happening for weeks with no end in sight. It's based on hatred toward Jews in America. Where is Biden? Biden, the hypocrite, is silent. Well, first off, let's be clear. A woman was killed in Charlottesville. A woman was killed. Nobody has been
peaceful protester.
Yeah, a peaceful protester. Heather Heyer. Nobody's been killed in these college protests. But the other thing is this tagging of Biden. Where is Biden? He's being a hypocrite. First of all, this protests on college campuses are first the responsibility of university administrators. 2, mayors of cities. 3, governors. So to try to act like, oh, Biden is your fault. No, we understand the hierarchy, and what you have again, you have this constant battle that we're seeing, and I was on a plane yesterday flying back, and I was talking to a gentleman, and he was complaining about the protest, and first thing I said was, hold up, why are they protesting? I said not this overarching. I said no. I said you have to. I said how I operate is, I asked, why is somebody protesting? And I said, if you look at these protests, many of them, they've given the reasons why they're protesting. But folk don't want to focus on the why. They want to establish, I believe, unfortunately, and I keep seeing a lot of it, these other narratives where it's, no, I think this is why they're protesting. No, you have to ask the very people why they are protesting.
And Roland, by the way, this is not you. You and I protested the Iraq War, and probably you protested for civil rights in the United States. I protested for civil rights everywhere in Europe. We were called agitators. We were called pro-terrorists. When we protested against the Iraq War on the basis that it was wrong, it will unleash instability and radicalization, we were called pro-Saddam Hussein, pro-Al-Qaeda, etc. So again and again, they use this language of division and hatred. And I see even ADL. I see ADL calling these students, basically inciting us and calling them pro-Hamas and pro-Hezbollah. You will get these students killed by doing that. And our Fleischer said nothing when Trump defended the neo-Nazis in Charlottesville and called them very fine people after they killed Heather Heyer. We need to remember who he worked for and who he lobbied for. And once again, I think we should stop using and weaponizing anti-Semitism to protect Netanyahu's government, who have no problem endorsing, normalizing the likes of Viktor Orban, who have no problem that Donald Trump dine and wine with real neo-Nazis and anti-Semitic people. I mean, it's time to call the hypocrisy, but also it's time to stand up for these students' rights, because if we manage to crush these students and alienate them, we lost the future. We lost the next generation. If we cannot give these students at least the respect to listen to what their demands are, and not only listen to them, to take into the consideration the people who are risking their lives, so that America is not seen by the rest of the world as enabling atrocities in Gaza, then we are not only America's reputation is being damaged, is being eroded. Democracy itself is on the line. If you believe in these things, you need to start now, cutting any tie with this government in Israel, not defend them at the United Nations, but also stop threatening the International Court of Justice, who is trying to do their job in holding Israel accountable. You cannot have democracy without accountability. You cannot have democracy without free speech. You cannot have democracy by enabling an ethno-colonial, racist state. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot say, well, our foreign policy can be racist and can be militarist and can be rogue and lawless, but here in America, we are different. You cannot demand that these students respect the rule of law here while you're yourself violating every law of war in Gaza and beyond.
Questions from panel. Robert, you're first.
On this point, what we're seeing is that students around the country, these probably are the biggest student protests we've seen since Kent State and during the 1960s. But what do you think will be the very clear policy proposals to come out of this that the Biden administration can respond to? One, we have the issue of the continuation of military sales to Israel. We have the lack of humanitarian aid. We have the failures to call for a ceasefire in the UN. But what we've seen thus far is that the calls that President Biden has made to Netanyahu have gone unheeded. What exactly should we, we're going to crystallize what the students are asking for into some concise points. What do you think they should be? And will Netanyahu even listen to those?
Whether Netanyahu listen or not, it's not about Netanyahu anymore. It's about the United States itself. We have democracy on the line. We have the looming threat of a second Trump presidency. What are you offering American voter for the next elections? What is the vision that you have? Can Biden with straight face stand there and say, I'm defending democracy here at home and overseas, while actually knowing very well that his State Department said Israel violating the Leahy law, an American law. And despite knowing that, he bypassed Congress and authorized the selling of weapons to the Israelis that are being used to butcher women and children. 14,000 children died, were killed, slaughtered in 4 months. If we don't stop this mass slaughter and mass starvation, and the only way to stop it is stop arming Netanyahu's government, stop basically bullying and intimidating the International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court, who are investigating war crimes, by the way, from Hamas and the Israelis. And they want a process of accountability. And thirdly, stop enabling and defending the military dictatorship Israel imposed and been imposing for almost 60 years on Palestinians. They couldn't impose that dictatorship without America's support, financial support, diplomatic support, and shielding them in the courts, but also shielding them at the United Nations. Every UN resolution was vetoed by the United States. It's time to stop vetoing resolution when you know that this is actually not only wrong, this is actually producing extremism, radicalization, instability, and eroding your own democracy.
Rebecca.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. So in the early 1960s, we saw a lot of students on campus and off campus protesting segregation. In the late 1960s, we saw college students protesting against the Vietnam War. In the 1980s, we saw students protesting against apartheid in South Africa. 2003, we saw students protesting against the Iraqi war. 2011, we saw students protesting against with the Occupy Wall Street movement. So now, in of the current protests that are happening across the country, we're also seeing states starting to impose the criminalization of the right to protest. What trajectory do you see for America if America continues down this path in creating in making it if America continues to criminalize young people and all people, quite frankly, from their right to protest?
Authoritarianism, fascism, and it always starts by trying not only to criminalize, to unleash violence, state violence. We've seen a glimpse of it yesterday in UCLA, and by the way, it was only peaceful protesters on the pro-Palestinian side or anti-war side, and the pro-Israelis were not only violent, they were chanting genocidal chants against Palestinians, calling for Nakba. These are the same things that I grew up under in the occupied territories. As a teen, I would go to the occupied territory, Ramallah, and in the West Bank to teach kids whose schools was destroyed by the army, and we would put blankets on the dirt just to teach kids how to read and write, and very often will be assaulted by terrorists, by Jewish Israeli terrorists, many of whom came from the United States, and they will basically beat the children, terrorize people, and kill them with the protection of the police and with the protection of the army. These scenes you can see everywhere in the occupied territories. They are trying to import that kind of models to the United States. It's not a coincidence that the mayor of New York, Adam, said that he will be bringing from Israel the experience he learned as a police person. Look at how the police treat Palestinians, Black people like all of us. If any of us would walk in the streets in the West Bank, they will think you're Palestinians like me, and probably you would be targeted exactly like any Palestinians. When Ta-Nehisi Coates went to the occupied territories, they kept asking him, "What religion are you? What faith do you belong to?" And he kept telling them, I am. They wanted to know if he was a Muslim. When he told them that he was atheist, basically, he wasn't religious, they were confused, but they insisted because it's an ethno-national state. It's a state that if you are Jewish and Jewish only, then you have protection of the law. If you are a Palestinian, Muslim or Christian, and you happen to be actually also Black, then you are subject to the law, that you are under the boot of the military dictatorship. And one of the things that is most shocking, when Ethiopian Jews arrived Israel, many of whom were were sterilized without knowing they were sterilized, and the state admitted later that they were sterilizing them. They were giving them injection Reprovera, so they could not make children, because ultimately, not only the issue of religion, there's an issue also of race and skin tone. And we need to tell these truths. They're hard truth to hear for many American Jews who have a myth about Israel, but the reality on the ground is something else. It's an ethno-nationalist, and you see a glimpse of it already being imported to the United States.
Suzette?
Yes, Brother Roland. I, too, stayed up last night watching the news coverage of what was going on in Colombia and sadly witnessing Mayor Adams send in troops onto a college campus. I want to ask our guest, as we have been kind of hearing this co-opted narrative about outside agitators, how do you think that is actually diluting the message when it comes to what the students actually want? Because as you stated, the vast majority of students have been peacefully, and even on the pro-Israel side, you're actually seeing some agitators there. I want to actually go into what the administration of these colleges and universities should be doing to address what is actually happening. As Robert stated, they might be looking for the student protesters might be looking for the Biden administration to act, but I don't know that I've seen any headlines as to the administration at these respective universities actually coming up with a plan to sit down and address the students' desires. What do you think the administration's role should be? And do you think we'll see more of the model we saw last night of city police and state police coming in to address student protesters? And what does that do to their free speech rights? But what do you think the actual administration of these colleges should be doing when it comes to what the students' demands are?
Really, before you answer that, I'll say this here. I'm familiar with the negotiations that were happening with Columbia. And Rula, one of the problems that actually was there is that they were so decentralized that you didn't have any hierarchy. And so you had different people who were negotiating with different student groups. And so part of the problem is that there were concessions that were offered. Jelani Cobb, the dean of the Columbia School of Journalism, was one of the two folks who was negotiating. Reverend Mark Thompson was involved as well. And so part of the issue is that, okay, on some of these campuses, the key is, who are you talking to? Who can you actually negotiate with? And so that was one of the issues, I think, with the Columbia students, is that there were so many different factions. You didn't actually have, a clear leadership, if you will, in order to deal with as a part of the negotiation. Go ahead, your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. They're brilliant. One thing I want to report, and I think it's very important to know, Brown University decided yesterday, after a negotiation with the students, that they would vote if they would divest from investing with any armed companies in October. They will vote. People will have right to vote, yes or no. And guess what? Protest was over. There's no incumbent. It's over. The inability of President Shafiq of Columbia University not only to listen, but to engage. And I believe the first action that she took, she is very loyal to her donors. She is terrified and she wants to keep her job. This is the woman that during the Arab Spring, by the way, said, we don't need more freedoms for Arabs. We need more economic opportunities, meaning we want charity, not liberty, which is, I find it ironic that this is the woman leading this organization. She was at the London School of Economics. She has a track record of basically, whitewashing authoritarianism and saying, yeah, give them some food, give them some water. It's no different than DeSantis, who said slavery was created some opportunities. I cannot hear these things without thinking of the racism and also the delusion behind the mindset of these people. So I think there's groups of people that she decided immediately to expel to save her job. And basically, probably she was pressured, but trustees and donors and others who rather hold these kids accountable than listen to them or divest. They don't want to divest from the armed companies. They don't want to be viewed as conceding to these young students. So I think we have a long way. And again, we need to remember what happens when you start inciting against young people. When Donald Trump started inciting against media organizations, I want to remind everybody that somebody took a gun and went to the Maryland Gazette and killed 5 people. I fear for the lives of these young students. Sooner or later, these lynching mob, these thugs, pro-Israeli thugs, will get someone killed because they believe that these people are terrorists. They believe they are the enemy. They believe what Ari is writing, that they hate America and they hate Jews, which is a lie. And we need to push back against these lies. Look at every student was arrested. 1,300 students were arrested. A lot of them are Jewish. But nobody is talking about the fact that the Jewish community in America is divided between who believe that Bibi Netanyahu has a right to exterminate Palestinians and those who believe that it's dangerous, that is reckless, that he would use mass slaughter and mass starvation. We believe that what he's doing is against Jewish values. But we need to stop talking about the issue out of fear, because we need to engage in a serious way about anti-Semitism, but also anti-Black people racism and anti-Muslim and Arabs and Islamophobia. I mean, I want protection for all students, whether they protest in Charlottesville or they protest in UCLA or protest in Texas. They might say things that I am uncomfortable with, but they have the right to say it. What I am not comfortable with, police storming campus, beating professors and students and brutalizing them. You know, by the way, these images have been circulating in Iran, in China, in Russia, and say, we don't want America ever to lecture us about free speech or about Hong Kong protesters or how to manage our own affairs because they lost their credibility. What they're doing, it's not only playing on national media, and we have this conversation. Regimes around the world are looking at the United States and they cannot believe that to protect Netanyahu's government, the most discredited prime minister, they're willing to erode America's own democracy at home.
Roland, we appreciate your perspective. Always glad to have you on, and look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much. Please thank your amazing contributors, and I love always to be with you. And let's continue this because what's coming will be, I fear what's coming is even worse. Thank you.
All right, then. Also, happy belated birthday as well. All right.
Thank you.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
Earlier this week, during a Wisconsin rally, Trump alluded that the 2020 election was stolen and said that if reelected, he would give, quote, police their power back, unquote, and give them immunity.
We're going to rebuild our cities and become a beacon of hope, safety, beauty, better than ever before. We're going to rebuild our cities. We're going to work with Democrat mayors who are running in every instance, running them. Democrat mayors and many Democrat governors, and we're going to rebuild our cities. We're going to bring them back like they used to be. We're going to make them safe places again. We're going to give our police their power back, and we're going to give them immunity from prosecution. So they're not prosecuted for doing their job. We'll take over the horribly run capital of our country, Washington, D.C., and clean up, renovate, and rebuild our capital city so that it's no longer a nightmare of murder and crime, but rather it will become the most beautiful capital anywhere in the world. On day one, I will sign a new executive order to cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, transgender insanity, and other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto the lives of our children. I will not give one penny to any school that has a vaccine mandate or mask mandate. I will fully uphold our under siege Second Amendment. It is under siege like never before. We will protect innocent life and we will restore free speech rapidly. And I will do something that's very important to me, maybe more important to me than any other person in the world. I will secure our elections because you know what happened in 2012. Our goal will be one-day voting with paper ballots, proof of citizenship, and voter ID.
All right, so I'm going to go to my panel on this to deal with this fantasy land that Donald Trump lives in. I'm going to go to you first, Cameron. What are some of your thoughts on these comments of Trump and his plan for 2025?
I'm actually quite scared. I mean, quite frankly, I'm scared. To have a major party candidate literally with a complete disdain for the Constitution, literally telling us and putting it in plain sight his focus on an authoritarian rule. When you start talking about giving police immunity, that's one thing. But when these also a Time magazine article came out this week where he really outlined some of the horrifying things he plans to do once he's in office, kind of using the National Guard and the military as his own personal police force, the ability to say cut federal funding from schools. He's using all the dog whistles and all the things that he hoped gins his base up with transgender and critical race theory, and then all the things that he plans to do in terms of cutting aid and funding and help overseas. Like, not only would America really be in trouble, like the world will be in trouble. We have been a pillar of democracy, and through right or wrong through this country's history, we've at least had presidents who at least on the front lines and things they would say have a respect for the laws of the land. But to literally be able to utilize and say, like, hey, I'm going to use police, National Guard, military to mass deport folks, to quench any uprising. And you mentioned earlier in the show, he might not even want to get out of office again.
He's not going to want to leave office. He didn't want to leave the first time. Okay, he didn't want to leave the first time. So, Donald Trump talks about crime rising in America, but that's actually contrary to the actual data. NBCnews.com, as well as other major news outlets, have an article from March 19th, 2024. The U.S. crime rate is still dropping, FBI data shows. And we see that the national crime rate has been declining each year that President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have been in office. And very quickly, and I'm coming to you next, Teresa, it says the new fourth quarter numbers showed a 13% decline in murder in 2023 from 2022, a 6% decline in reported violent crime, and a 4% decline in reported property crime. That's based on data from around 13,000 law enforcement agencies policing about 82% of the U.S. population that provided the FBI with data through November. Go ahead, Teresa, because for those who think that things cannot get worse, okay, yes, they will under Donald Trump, a second Trump administration.
Yeah, this is very troubling. I agree with Cameron when you say we are in a very scared state, especially with these fantasies. There's one thing when it talks to the base, right? And what is that base? The base, as I always find, a bit scarier than Donald Trump himself, is the same that we are working for in some way, shape, or form. So we don't know who really the base is, right? These are these hidden backdoor conversations with these individuals who feel this way. And so as we, as a public, try to push for equality across LGBTQIA, transgender rights, black and brown people rights, all the equality in the real estate, all of these things that make our country actually great. We have someone that is saying we're going to go back to a time where, we were in charge, and as we already know who that is. And so, and our guest earlier kind of already alluded to, it's bigger than, Joe Biden and his election. Yes, we need to vote for him, but here are the reasons why. The reasons why is because we are a united states, and that united feel and that united firm to keep violence down, to actually look at the stats. That's why we're paying for it, right? Taxpayer dollars are paying for these reports. So if we don't believe the reports and we only believe in poll numbers, what are we saying that we're doing? We're doing mismanagement of leadership. So I think there is one, again, we only have a couple months here till November to really get across the finish line with the right elected leaders, and, with someone that is, quote, on trial, fighting for their own freedom, fighting, to financially get themselves out of debt. It's not them, it's their team around them. That's something that we all need to really be a participant in terms of coming to an election and making the right decision.
Absolutely. Well, we look at the executive order that President Joe Biden did May 25th, 2022 on policing, the second anniversary of the killing of George Floyd, which dealt with policing at the federal level, because based upon the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, states' rights, the majority of the control over policing is not at the federal level, but it's at the state level. But something that the Department of Justice can do is investigate the patterns and practices of police departments, which is something taking place now under the Biden-Harris administration, which basically stopped under the Trump administration. There was only one investigation into police departments under the Trump administration. And we know when Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, Donald Trump's first attorney general, became attorney general, one of the first things he did was to stop the investigations in police departments. And he said they were going to take basically a hands-off approach to policing because it was demoralizing police to have these investigations. He said we need to take a hands-off approach. And when you hear Donald Trump talking about immunity for police officers, this falls right in line with that. Go ahead, Cameron, with your, I'm sorry, I went to Cameron already. I went to Teresa. Lastly, I got to tell people, read this fact sheet. I've talked about it before. Fact sheet: the Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. It's at whitehouse.gov. It's a 36-page document that shows you policy by policy how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration are helping the African-American community. Now, you compare that to what Trump and his cronies are saying, and you look at the 4 years of the Donald Trump administration and compare the two. You don't have to take my word for it. Proper documentation ends all conversation.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.